Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Tour Catch-Up, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com.
Masterful Medvedev completes a title hat-trick.
Nadal exits the top 10 for the first time since 2005.
And Tennis Paradise gets underway in Indian Wells.
Chris, today is the 7th of March and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ, specially backed by our crowdfunders Carol Gibson and Diana Duquesne. It's been another gripping week on the ATP and WTA tours. We have had yet another title for Daniil Medvedev, a Medvedev masterclass out in the Middle East in Dubai. Donna Vekic as well, continuing her great start to the season with a fantastic final win against Caroline Garcia in Monterrey. And hold the phone, Chris, Breakpoint Season 2 on Netflix. It has been announced for next year. Get the series link out.
Well, I think that we need to try and make an appearance in that. I think they need a podcast to do some commentary. We can build up the hype. We can set the scene.
Oh, I wish.
Maybe they'll reach out for some sound bites, Joel. You know, we've been approached before.
We have. And I would love if anyone from Team Breakpoint is listening, if anyone wants to come on the show and talk about the series with us, we would happily put an episode out there, because I feel like we have reached out so many times and we're just running into brick walls.
We will promise to scrub up well. We will be on time, and all three of us will make ourselves available.
And you're really excited because you're hoping maybe Holger Rune will make more of an appearance in Series 2.
Maybe that's my in. Maybe that's who I reach out to, Joel. That could be a good way of looking at it. But that is what the rumour is.
New strategy.
Yes, the rumour is that he is filming for it. So I think he's definitely a good candidate. I hope Alcaraz is as well. That's a comeback story. That's always pretty entertaining. But they haven't even finished releasing all of it. We've got more episodes in June. So
yeah, early
renewal must have been very popular.
Yes, exactly. And we mustn't forget, so Kim is not here this week. She is on holiday.
Sunning
she's out
herself.
in Palma. Yeah, she's sunning herself. So not here. She has sent us a few snaps. She has been at of course she has. She's been at the Rafael Nadal Academy, and she sent us a message earlier saying she was currently on a rooftop bar in Palma drinking a Hugo. And I'm not going to lie, am I just like a cultural Luddite? I have no idea what a Hugo is.
So I read that and thought she was having a Paloma, and I didn't read that as Parma. That makes more sense to me. I know what that one is. That one's with tequila and grapefruit.
It makes even less sense to me. I've got no idea what all these terms are, but it does sound very nice.
Sounds fancy and it looks lovely. Yeah. So we not too many sympathies for Kim there. I think she's having a lovely time.
No, I didn't want to kind of be the hard person, be the difficult person, be like, you must record from out in Palma. So yeah, she's having the week off. So it's just me and you to talk about all the action from last week, as well as looking forward to Indian Wells. We're recording a day later, so we were able to digest the Indian Wells draws, which we're going to be talking about in the second half. But yeah, of course, we're going to start with our highlights from last week. So Chris, what was your highlight from the tour last week?
Well, my highlight is a social media highlight, so it's slightly cheating. But Joel, you're famous, not just for the podcast, but because you are a Jessica Pegula meme now. So Joel recreated the Doritos moment that we spoke about last week, and we rewrote it to be about what is it like being a podcaster. And JPEG herself saw it, gave us a cheeky like. And so that has been seen by quite a few people, Joel. So how do you feel that your sad Doritos pic has been viewed by 3,000 people?
I know. It's amazing. I didn't know what to think when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, the podcast has made it. We've now famous enough that a picture of me with an orange Doritos bag has got liked by Jessica Pegula. I mean, these are incredible times.
World number 3, no less. I mean, that's really, it's not like it's a top 50. This is something pretty special.
Well, exactly. So, Jessica Pegula, many thanks for liking the tweet. It has given me so much energy and so much life, I feel, since that happened. Just gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. And, anytime I'm now going to collect, I feel, a Doritos bag, I'm always going to think about that moment.
Well, I mean, keep it going. Take some more pictures and we'll keep linking it. And then eventually we'll get her on the podcast. That might be the way to get her attention, Joel.
Yeah. That's a great shout. So, shall we try and lure her in with some sad Doritos, maybe, perhaps, onto the show?
That's a commitment you're willing to make, is it?
Yes. Maybe. Well, maybe if we go to the Billie Jean King Cup and USA are there, and maybe she plays,
we'll buy her some Doritos.
We'll request a player interview in the media room after, and we'll bring the Doritos to her next time.
That's a good idea. I like that. That sounds like something that will really spice up the press room. That's for sure.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, that was what you enjoyed.
Yeah, what was yours,
this week.
Joel?
I did have something that I enjoyed. Again, for some reason, it is to do, like last week, it is the same this week. It is to do with Maxime Cressy. And I know. And he actually set an open record last Tuesday. But it's a record I don't necessarily think it's one that you want. Because remember last time I was speaking about how he served 4 double faults in one game, one after the other, and just obviously lost his serve. Well, he's gone one better than that. Well, I say one better. He's gone 21 times more better than that. He served 25 double faults, which is a record for a best of 3 set match.
That's not
during
good.
his first round contest, I know, against Felix Auger-Aliassime out in Dubai. Yeah, I mean, he did struck like 27 aces, and it obviously ended, in defeat for him. But I was just like, man, that is impressive. I mean, in the era of Camila Giorgi, Arina Sabalenka, Sasha Zverev, he is putting himself in that list of players who have issues with serves, second serves, and double faults.
I mean, that's not necessarily a record that I think he would be chasing, but I think you need 24 points to win a set. So essentially, he gifted enough points to win a set to Felix horrible in that one. But he was only broken once, which does beg the question, slightly more embarrassing for Felix, FAA, that he wasn't able to break him more than once when...
That is a very good point, because Auger-Aliassime, he was 1 for 14 on break points. I mean, I haven't watched the highlights, but this feels like a very, very ugly match. Probably not one for the
Madison Keys,
not one for the highlight reel at the end of the season.
Yes, it's giving me notes of that match from last week as well. One to forget for him, anyway.
One to forget for Maxime Cressy. Sorry,
Cressy's still messy, we should say. Yeah,
he's still messy. I'm gonna try not to talk about him in a negative light next week. Hopefully he does something amazing. To be honest, as much as I see him serving all these double faults, I still think he could probably set the record for like most aces or most unreturned serves. So
I think he probably could. And I think we can give this a positive spin because he did pick up the doubles title, I believe.
That is very true. That is very true. So
maybe he was just ironing out the kinks so he could get it done on the doubles court this week. So messy on the singles court, not so messy on the doubles court.
Exactly. So Maxime Cressy did pick up the doubles title in Dubai, and we had not really a surprise winner in the singles competition. We had Daniil Medvedev win in the final. He defeated Andrei Rublev. Pretty routine, straightforward match, 6-2, 6-2. I think the more interesting result was in the semi-final when Medvedev defeated Novak Djokovic in straight sets. So, I mean, he's on some absolutely great form at the moment. 3 titles in 3 weeks. He, had that little dip when he was outside the top 10 and it felt really odd. Karen Khachanov was doing well and Medvedev was like below him, but he has come storming back. He's storming up the rankings and, he's going into Indian Wells as the favourite. I mean, to me right now, is there an argument to say that he is playing like the true world number one?
Goodness, that's pretty punchy, I'd say. I think obviously Australia wasn't necessarily his best tournament result that he's had so far, going out in straight sets to Korda in round 3. But he is the form player of the moment, that's for sure, because Djokovic in that semi really did not look like himself. It was very odd because, I mean, the first serve percentage wasn't that high from Medvedev, but the points won on return were few and far between, with only one break point being generated, going 1 from 1. So that's not normally kind of the serve bot reputation that Medvedev would have, because he does tend to get broken every now and again, and it's not always, a straight set win for him. So this was something that I was quite surprised by. But Joel, you did say that you called this. You could see this happening. Tell me what you thought. 2 sets or 3 sets did you think that one would have gone?
Yeah, I did sense it. I was at the weekend. I was away in Manchester. As you can probably tell by my voice, I'm a little bit kind of worse for wear at the moment. But yeah, I sensed just the momentum Medvedev had, and also the scratchy start that Djokovic had to the tournament in Dubai. You had Thomas Machak, Czech qualifier in the first round. Don't really know a lot about him, and he was pushed to a final set tiebreak, which sort of gave me an indication, with Djokovic in terms of, where his level was at. I don't know if it was the conditions, adjusting to the, to the surface, but it was very much for me kind of Medvedev coming in with momentum and just kind of rubber stamping, I think, what we've already seen in the last couple of weeks in terms of, how good he's playing at the moment. And when it did come to that final against Rublev, you just really felt, unfortunately for Rublev, you just really felt there was one winner, because again, it's a head-to-head record that is very much in favour of Medvedev. I swear, like, Rublev is always sort of the bridesmaid, never the bride, a little bit like Yannick Sinner. And there was great kind of respect and sportsmanship between the two players, but just, if you just put it on tennis playing ability alone, when Daniil Medvedev plays his best tennis and when Andrei Rublev plays his best tennis, normally Daniil Medvedev's going to win that.
I think you're pretty accurate there. I would draw attention to the fact that the previous 2 meetings they played prior to this one, Rublev had won. So it does kind of show the fact that he had got those 2 wins. That was, I think, that was in Cincinnati and in the ATP finals.
Yeah, true.
But that was when Medvedev lost every match in a final set tiebreak or something like that. But it shows how far his game has come, because Rublev, I think people have thought, has kind of played some great tennis this year. He took out Holger in Australia. He's been putting some results together, a little bit up and down at times, and he's been a bit frustrated with how he's been playing. But it was very, very pedestrian, that final. It was a bit of a non-contest.
I did really enjoy. I actually think I enjoyed the on-court presentation, I think, more than the actual match, because there are a few great quotes from it. As I say, tremendous respect for each other, but there was quite a barbed comment towards a certain Stefanos Tsitsipas from Medvedev, who said, "Not long ago, I remember reading that one player, hint hint, Stefanos Tsitsipas, said Andre doesn't have so many weapons. I hope you beat this guy many more times," which I thought was very interesting that he brought up, talking about that Rublev, again, I feel like I still need to see more in terms of what other weapons he has, but certainly when Medvedev's playing him, he thinks he certainly can bring more to the court than just a big fiery forehand and a big first serve.
I mean, the irony of the result being 6-2, 6-2, it didn't look like many weapons were on display that day.
Yeah.
It seems a bit odd, doesn't it? I think he's maybe embracing his villain era once more. We had that previously, famous scenes at the US Open from years ago, and Cincinnati knocking over a camera. Maybe he's back in his villain era, and he just felt that he had too much support and he wanted to spice things up. Kind of in the rivalry with Tsitsipas, because it feels slightly unnecessary. I mean, why are we talking about Tsitsipas when he wasn't even a contender this week? So that feels a bit of a low blow, because I think that everyone moved on from that. Even we'd stopped the tool shed references.
Do you still put Rublev in that category of like one big weapon, that was it? Because I do think in that final, the one thing that Medvedev was able to do that not many of Rublev's opponents did throughout the week consistently was really target that backhand side of Rublev. And if you do that more often than not, then it's going to break down from Rublev's point of view and get away from him quite quickly. And I think that's what Medvedev did really well is just not hit it to the Rublev forehand, or not enable, hit so deep that Rublev wasn't able to run around and hit his forehand. Because when he does get into those positions, he can dominate. We've seen that. But I just think in this final game, it was just what I would have expected, that Medvedev, his tactical execution, he can do things not necessarily other players can do, and the depth he just puts on the ball. Yeah, Rublev was really, really struggling with it.
I do think he's pretty mid-table top 10. He's definitely not, even though he's been ranked as high as kind of like number 5 this year, I think. He's not really one of those top 4 contenders or top 5 players. Djokovic obviously has moved up the rankings now. Medvedev is still ranked below him, I believe. So it does feel like that's a bit odd from a rankings perspective. And when you're looking at kind of tournaments like Indian Wells, as we'll preview a bit later in the podcast, I don't think any of us will probably have Rublev going that deep in the draw, because he does tend to pick up the titles or pick up a final when the 250s and the 500s are being played, and put in a decent showing at the 1000s, but he's not picking up those sort of titles. So I think for me, he does have a big forehand, but the thing that's holding him back is a bit like what holds back Andy Murray at times, who doesn't always have that big weapon, is actually, I think he gets down on himself. He's a bit too hard on himself. And I think that's something that people who I've been speaking to about tennis have been saying. It's quite hard watching him when he's sort of hitting himself with his racket, or kind of getting very frustrated very early on. And when you're someone like him who needs to be playing very free tennis, and kind of enabling that forehand to kind of let rip, I think it does get very mental with him, and it can kind of cause big problems. So it's not that he doesn't have the weapons. I think it's he doesn't have the
channeling the emotions.
I agree. Yeah, I think it is something around that, because when we've seen Medvedev kind of get in his head about things, he doesn't get the results either. So I think it's a fine balance. But clearly, I mean, he's beaten Djokovic before, he's beaten Nadal before. He's a very good player, but he isn't able to kind of do it at the moments that matter the most.
And it was nice to see Sasha Zverev as well get to a semi-final. Look like he's getting back to form of old. Before we move on to Acapulco, we've just got to spare a thought, don't we, Chris, for Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, because it could have very easily been very different for Andrei Rublev, because Fokina had, he had 5 match points, didn't take a single one, and ended up losing the match.
Yep, he had 5 match points in that second set tie-break.
And that's not even the worst thing about it.
Yeah, and the worst thing about it for him was that actually happened to him the year before, that he had match points, I believe, against Jannik Sinner, same round, didn't get those 2 big wins. So if I was him, I'd have a quick look to see what else is being played in that week, and I would consider maybe taking a trip to Acapulco.
Although I'm not going to have too much sympathy for him, because he did put out one of my favourites, Malik Yaziri, into retirement 6-2, 6-love. So, he's got less sympathy from me. But, Rublev doing really well to get to the final from that position. I mean, another player who I would say a lot of people, a lot of fans would say doesn't necessarily have the big weapons, Alex de Minaur in Acapulco, winning the title, biggest title, I think, of his career, ATP 500, climbing back up the rankings, defeated Tommy Paul in the final. I think Tommy Paul was a little bit knackered from his semi-final against Taylor Fritz, which was a bit of a long one, bit of an epic. And I just think, well, one player you don't want to come up against is, after a really long match, is someone like a de Minaur and his athleticism, which won out eventually in the end 6-1 in the third. What did you make of this result? Because I wasn't having de Minaur as a champion, at the start of the week. I think it was unfortunate, this draw. Carlos Alcaraz, dropped out after the draw was made. Cam Norrie was scheduled to play, decided not to play against it. So the draw was, I think, a little bit lighter than it necessarily would have been as a 500. But great result for de Minaur nonetheless. Yeah,
absolutely. I think what really kind of shone through this week from de Minaur is the fact that he is one of the most physically fit on the tour. He did have a really tough match against Holger in that semi-final. That was something where Rune was actually cramping in that one, even though it was kind of a 3-set match. So I think it's something where the physicality in Mexico seemed to really play a really big role. We saw in that one with Fritz and Tommy Paul that Fritz was struggling physically. He looked like he was kind of going to throw up at the side of the court. And so it just kind of all credit to De Minaur. He outlasted the rest of the field. And as we've talked about, and you've said, not necessarily known for having the biggest weapons. When I saw him play in Stockholm, I was pretty surprised by how kind of hard he does hit the ball. I mean, he's not the biggest hitter, but he definitely is able to cause some damage, and he makes you beat him. And I think that's something that he clearly showed this week, that he's not gonna give up, even though he lost that first set against Holger in the semi-final. So a great result for him, and it makes you think, if he's able to put a couple more of these results together, he might be able to push towards, top 15, maybe getting towards top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. I think if you look at someone like a Cam Norrie, you would again say doesn't have the biggest weapons on the tour, but has, absolutely made the most of it, and, has got into the top 10. And I think Alex de Minaur, could look to that and see that as inspiration to go, even further up the rankings. I mean, one player who I'm a bit kind of confused by at the moment, Casper Ruud, he was the highest ranked player in the draw. He was the second seed. Yeah, went out to Taro Daniel in the second round. It's not quite clicking, I feel, for Casper Ruud at the moment.
It's very odd. I think I saw some comments by Marion Bartley probably a few weeks ago, who was saying that essentially because of the nature of Casper's off-season, he didn't actually have it as his off-season. He actually had his off-season after Australia. That's when he did his main training block.
Interesting.
So when you think about that, he obviously wasn't going to be prepared to play his best tennis in Australia. And then when you think about this kind of match coming just after that, he obviously hasn't got his tennis to the place it needs to be competitive at this sort of time, because the unforced errors in that first round match, which he did win, it was probably one of the worst performances I've seen from a top 5 player.
It was really
it was right up there. And Daniel's one of those players who is very talented, who's never probably achieved what he should have achieved. But I was shocked this was his first top 10 win he'd ever had, because he always seems to cause these top players problems and does rise to the occasion. But if I was Casper, I'd be a bit concerned, because if you're waiting for clay, then that's one thing. But if you're trying to put together some results, this is not the way to do it.
No, absolutely not. Maybe he should have played out in Chile on the clay, maybe to get some form, because we did have a final event in the Golden Swing. We had Nicolas Jarry, Santiago's own Nicolas Jarry, win in the final against Thomas Echeverry of Argentina, 3 sets. I mean, Nicolas Jarry throughout the week, he was basically the comeback kid, buoyed on by passionate Chile fans, to the point, I might add, that in his match against Diego Schwartzman, Schwartzman basically had to get 6 or 7 security guards, he said in press, because he didn't feel safe. That's how crazy it can get out there in South America. But yeah, Nicolas Jarry coming through in 3 sets in the final. I don't really know what to feel about this, because Jarry, he was suspended because of doping. I mean, absolute fair play to him. I think he came out of that without a ranking. So to see him do this and get back up there from being so far down, I mean, we've talked about how hard and how long actually that can take for some people, but to see it from that perspective, it is really impressive. But I also have to sort of bite my tongue a little bit, because he did get suspended by the tennis integrity unit.
Yes, indeed. For context, for those who might not be aware, this was from a failed test in 2019 in November that was at the Davis Cup finals. And what was kind of it was put down to at the time was Brazilian vitamins. And the ITF accepted that was the reason, but it still is a banned substance that was detected. So it was a doping ban, and Jarry did also accept this. So it's not the most kind of questionable of these cases. I think we've seen ones that have been absconded very quickly around some dodgy meat here and there. It's not a Sharapova, though, which was much more questionable and much more dubious. And there are still question marks hanging over that and how that actually affects how she is viewed in the sport. But this one did seem to be one where they did accept it. It's not like a Simona Halep situation either. There was an explanation offered and it was accepted, but the ban was still given. So in terms of the redemption arc, it's nice to see someone able to rebuild their career from what does sound like an unfortunate situation. But at the same time, I think it's not like a doper is being glorified because, as you say, he's had to work his way back up.
Yeah, exactly. It's it was a great
story.
Yeah, and a great occasion in the final. You're watching it. It was the crowd was literally bouncing, and that is one of, I think, the fun things about watching the events in South America. They feel just so out there and wild, and you feel like anything can happen. It can be tense environments, it can be fun environments. That's really kind of it's just complete world away from what you get at Wimbledon and Queens as a British tennis fan. So to see it from that angle, really, really exciting. But there's still some sort of things to kind of be dealing with. We did have on the women's side 2 tournaments out in Austin, Texas, and Monterrey as well. Marta Kostyuk and Donna Vekic were your champions on the women's side in those 250 events. So Austin, this final was interesting again, Chris, not necessarily from, I feel like, the result, but from as soon as championship point ended, because this was a match between Marta Kostyuk, Ukrainian Marta Kostyuk, versus Gracheva of Russia, and Kostyuk's been very vocal supporting Ukraine, and she did not shake the hand of Gracheva at the net. She did not pose for photos with Gracheva as well after the match. So for me, this was a very real situation that, we're still kind of talking about at the moment about what the war means for the grass court season and Wimbledon, and whether Russians and Belarusians will be able to play. But it's very real on the tour at the moment. And for me, this was one of those moments where I don't think we've had this sort of what if moment, so far. I think this is the first Ukrainian champion in a few years. So again, where do you stand on this? Is there any way, or can you begrudge Marta Kostyuk in terms of what she did and not shake the hand of Gracheva?
I have complete respect for the way that it was handled by everybody, to be honest. I think Kostyuk's made it clear that this is the approach that she wants to take when it comes to playing against Russians. Obviously, it's a very difficult situation to be in, and there's an awful lot going on. And it's a very hard place to draw a line. We've seen different Grand Slams take different policies. Yeah. She did obviously say that she wouldn't participate in an event if Azarenka from a Belarusian was playing. I think that was for a fundraiser or a kids' day. I think in the was it the US Open? She didn't shake Azarenka's hand there. She made everyone aware that she wasn't going to.
It wasn't a surprise thing that she did.
And
it wasn't.
And it didn't put a dampener on the event for her. I don't think. I think it was obviously a difficult situation, but didn't put a dampener for her. And everyone seemed pretty pleased in their speeches, including Garacheva. So I think it's something where it if anything, I think it's probably quite positive as a reminder that these tensions and what's going on is still very much real over a year into the war. So I actually think it was very well handled, and not so much like a drama headline, but I actually do think it's quite a pertinent and impactful way of expressing it, because they still competed. No one was denied the ability to compete, but there were boundaries that were drawn, and attention was kind of raised in a positive way.
And another final we had, which I think was very well competed, very well contested, Donna Vekic versus Caroline Garcia. I thought they both brought very high levels of tennis to the court. Big serving from both sides, but Donna Vekic coming through 7-5 in the third set in Monterrey against Garcia. I mean, Garcia is now 0 from 2 in finals this season. Hasn't necessarily set the world alight like she did, I think, at the back end of last season, but is still doing very well. But it's hard not to feel really happy for someone like Donna Vekic, given, the injuries that she's been through, where she was, seeing her ranking, unfortunately kind of tumble down. And then, this season, well, to be honest, since the back end of last season, it's all really changed for her with Pam Shriver coming on board, Australian Open quarterfinal. And it's just great to see her get back. Personally for me, get back to where she belongs.
Yeah, she's such a talented player, and she's someone who has had some really sort of incredible results, especially from a very, very young age. I mean, the first final she made was, I think it was in Uzbekistan in 2012. So, this is 11 years into her career, and she's still, I think she's 26. So just shows how much ability she's had. And it feels like she's been around for, a very long time. And some of the best matches I've seen actually have featured her. I think the match against Johanna Konta and Nottingham in 2017.
That Wimbledon match, fantastic.
The Nottingham
match.
And then the Wimbledon match, I think it was, both of those contests were kind of some of the finest examples of women's tennis and grass court tennis. And
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about specifically that Konta Vekic match at Wimbledon, because that was a very, very, very good match where all competitors brought it.
Yeah, and it was what a great example of women's tennis. And the match in Nottingham that preceded that, where she took the title, that was another great one. But and then I think what's great about Vekic is that even when she has been going through some pretty tough times, I mean, she picked up a title in Italy in 2021 as well. So she's even when she's struggling, she's still able to kind of put the results together. So to have them so consistent at the start of this year, I think is great, because she's someone who can really cause some damage. And when you look at the game that she has and how well she plays off both wings, how strong the serve can be, especially, in those Wimbledon matches, she's someone who has all the kind of the attributes that you would want from a top player. And it's something that, I mean, this was also interesting, because if one of the results earlier in the tournament for her had gone a little bit differently, I mean, she was not necessarily doing that well in her first round match. And we talked about this with Rublev, who obviously made the final. She was actually a set down when she went through because of her retirement from Serenka. So it just shows you that all some of these top players need is just that and then they're able to do something pretty great. I would say, Joel, a question I have for you on Garcia. So what's the difference this year from when she was picking up the titles last year? And I think she might arguably be playing better this year, but she isn't getting it done. Has everyone else sort of put a target on her back? Have they raised their game? Or actually, has she let her level drop a little bit?
I think for me, there's an expectation now from what to expect from Caroline Garcia, given her rise up the rankings and how well she was playing at the end of last year. So I wonder if that pressure is maybe affecting her a little bit, because we've seen the two finals she has made here and in Lyon. I don't think she obviously hasn't got the victory. I think she's gone in as the favourite each time. So I do wonder if there's a little bit of extra pressure that she's sort of getting used to. I don't think it's like the wheels have come off completely. I still think she's playing a very good level of tennis, and I genuinely think that final was one of the better finals we've seen so far on the WTA tour this season. But it's just coming to those clutch moments that aren't necessarily kind of falling her way.
Wow, having said that, Joel, though, there was in this one, I thought Vekic did play very, very well, and it was almost very impressive how Garcia was able to stay with her in that third set. I think she was love 40 down on serve and got the hold. So in those moments previously, I guess if you look at Garcia from maybe 2 or 3 years ago, she would have been broken. She wouldn't have got the hold or have the mental resolve in those situations. So I'm glad you're not counting her out yet, because Kim might be listening. You did.
I was just channeling what I genuinely, when you asked me that question, I was just actually channeling what would Kim say.
What would Kim say from the rooftop in Palma? Hugo in hand, exactly.
Yes, but I do think, I mean, Vekic is very good at, I think, just not being, again, like that Belinda Bencic type mentality of not getting flustered and playing under pressure and not being intimidated, and maybe some of the opponents that Caroline Garcia comes up against, they just don't feel, they've got to do well, I think, to not be intimidated by that big serve, aces that might just kind of fly past them. But yeah, I think it's still coming together. I just think it's just a few tweaks, I think, that she'll need to address in her game to get her back to firing from the end of last season.
Where do you think Vekic will be ranked by the end of the year, if you had to say, Joel?
That is a very good question. I think it's really hard, to look too far forward with someone like Donna Vekic, but given I think she's got a very good all-round game, I think she might do very well come the grass court season. She's certainly got kind of, I think, prowess there given her power-based game. So I think, top 10 is not out of the question. Do I expect to see her at the WTA Tour Finals at the end of the season? Probably not, but I maybe put her in that,
alternative camp,
9 to 16. 9 to 16, yeah. If that tournament in, I can't remember where it was, was still being played.
Was it Zoo High?
Yes.
The elite trophy.
For the 9. Yeah, when everyone just dropped out because they couldn't be asked. If that was still around, I could see Donna Vekic in that.
I can't believe that you say that, because that was Julia Gerges' happy hunting ground. I think she defended that title.
Oh, I feel like that says it all. But
got her a top 10 finish, Joel.
We're going to take a quick break now, but join us in the second half, where we will be discussing the news that Rafael Nadal will drop out of the top 10 for the first time since 2005 after Indian Wells. A look at the men and ladies singles draws out in tennis paradise, and the first roster of pairs announced for the newly vamped Hopman Cup. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, sponsored by downloadtennis.com. And now we are going to move on to a cheeky little par for the courts. And I'm looking forward to this because I'm not actually the quiz master this week, because this is going to be Chris to me. It's going to be a solo edition, isn't it?
It is a solo edition, so you're playing for your pride, Joel. So you've had some good results.
Regardless, I feel like I'm always paying for my pride, and it never ever really goes well.
Wow, I think you're on a winning streak, if I remember correctly. So let's see how we do here. There is a theme, and we are sticking to Indian Wells, and we're also sticking to something that allows one of my favourite players to be mentioned. So that is a spoiler, but we are looking at players who have won Indian Wells more than once. So that is what we are looking at. And I can tell you there are 17 names across the male and female editions of the tournament. And I'm going to set par. I think you've got to get 7.
Oh, this is tough. So more than once, and male and is that male and female in
male
singles?
And female. I'm setting par at 7. 8, I'll give you a special 8. You can get rid of the slam spoon of shame. That's okay. How we'll work it.
Okay. Ooh. Okay, right. I'm going to start with someone obvious, someone not there this year. Novak Djokovic.
That is correct.
Serena Williams.
She has indeed won it twice.
Rafael Nadal.
That is the correct answer. The low-hanging fruit is really being kind of got here, Joel.
Well, I've got to say Roger Federer.
We're going for all of the GOATs.
So is that 4? Okay,
That's
I'm over
4.
halfway there. Oh, I'm getting sweaty. I mean, this is sweaty palm time. Right. It's just really tricky. One of your players that you really like. It's just not going to be Sloane Stephens. It just can't be. I don't think Andy Murray won it twice either. I'm not convinced by that. I'm going to go back in the day and say Andre Agassi.
I have to say, I do think that's an incorrect answer.
Oh, so annoying. That is so annoying.
It's quite surprising, though. Did you have any more?
Yeah, I was going to say... I was thinking Leighton Hewitt, Pete Sampras.
You could have had both of those.
Oh, no. I was thinking Ash Barty, but I don't know.
Nope, that wouldn't have got you any points. So you would have got up to 7, potentially.
Yeah, that is frustrating.
Who's the one I really wanted you to get, Joel?
It's just not Sloane Stephens.
My OG favourite.
Steffi Graf? Martina Hingis?
Graf would have gotten you a point, but the one I'm looking for is Daniela Hanchikova, who actually beat Martina Hingis in the final.
Oh,
she's won it twice. She won it in
okay.
2002 and 2007.
Okay. Interesting.
And every year she reminds us on Instagram relentlessly. And why not?
Right,
why not Daniela?
You've warned me when I'm going to watch it over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to
I'll send you some highlights. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have like a notepad and count how many times when she comes on commentary, how many times she's gonna mention it. So what was the full list?
The full list you could have had was Jimmy Connors, Boris Becker, Jim Courier, Pete Sampras, Michael Chang, Leighton Hewitt, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Novak Djokovic, and then for the ladies' side we had Martina Navratilova, we had Mary Jo Fernandez, Steffi Graf, Lindsay Davenport, Serena Williams, Daniela Hanchikova, Maria Sharapova, and then Victoria Azarenka.
Oh, Sharapova and Azarenka, interesting. Yeah, that was a tough one.
A lot of one-time champions at Indian Wells.
I should have been more confident with my OG answers, if I'm not gonna lie, because I just wasn't sure. And how competitive I feel like the last decade has been, particularly on the women's side. It's just very hard to win these tournaments like more than once. So I wonder how Kim would have got on with that. Hopefully, yeah. We'll find. We'll ask it next time. But
we could do a midweek. We could do how many one-time champions can be named. Ooh, but I think that would be a long list. We'd have to see.
That would have been a long list. Yes. Well, moving on to our Tennis Weekly mailbag, we had an email this week from Saif, who asked us this question. Many people view Margaret Court's record of 24 majors as an unfair benchmark for Serena Williams because Court mostly played before the professional era. And I agree. So does setting Court's fake record as the goalpost give Serena an easy pass at being the GOAT because it avoids measuring Serena's career against Steffi Graf's? Full disclosure, I am a lifelong Steffi fan. Wow, where to start with this? I'm obviously going to start with you, Chris, because you're obviously a big Serena fan. And I know that she was always so intent on that 24 majors right at the top Margaret Court record. How do you view that, and has it almost provided do you think a smokescreen to other records that are arguably more impressive, like some of the stats Steffi Graf has produced, for example, weeks at world number one, which has only just been surpassed by Novak Djokovic?
Yeah, I think it's firstly, I think it's a fantastic question from Saif. I think it's something that I do think needs to be talked about a bit more, because it's kind of crazy that we aren't talking about Steffi Graf kind of prior to this in terms of that record being broken. I think
did we get too fixated as like tennis media, just tennis people in general, on the Margaret Court record?
I think we did. I think the headline was done. It was did kind of really put the hype in when it came to Serena's performances and kind of selling those tickets. Will she, won't she? But it really does make you think when you look at it that it seems like it's something that was, maybe Serena mentioned it, going for the all-time record, and maybe that was kind of her focus was on slams, and that's kind of why it became that narrative. But I was going to say, kind of when you look at last week, when we said about surpassing weeks at number one, you look at the length of time they've been playing. I mean, the Grand Slam debut for Serena was in 1998, and she played her last Grand Slams last to date in 2022. So that's a very long window, whereas all of Steffi's results happened from 1983 to 1999. So just a 16-year window. So that's something that's very, very different in terms of just how impressive those numbers were that she put together, including, the calendar slam, the golden slam in 1988. So when you look at some of these results and the dominance she was able to have, not losing at Grand Slams in 1995 or 1996 as well, didn't play the Australian Open those years. It's hard to argue that there was a player who was more dominant than Steffi Graf. And I think that she played longer... Yeah, she retired at the top of her game.
She retired at 30. She retired at 30, I think, at number 3 in the rankings. And again, there is, I think... It's going to be different for different people, but some people are going to be more impressed by the level of dominance someone had in a short period of time versus, I think, someone like a Serena, which has been maybe not as concentrated dominance, but, has gone over generational.
Yeah, and that's partly that approach has kind of led to the longevity of Serena's career. I think whenever I make comparisons from a GOAT perspective, I think the Serena Williams and Venus Williams story and everything that they've kind of triumphed against, I think as a collective effort, I do think that is, for me, GOAT worthy. But I do think if you're looking at the greatest female tennis player ever based on the results, I mean, you look at the Grand Slam results and, you know, she won a slam in her final year. She reached the final of Wimbledon, won Roland Garros quarterfinal. So it was very much bowing out right at the very top. And had she played longer, you know, she would have definitely picked up more results. But at the same time, had Serena not wanted Margaret Court's record so badly, she probably would have won quite a few of those last 6 finals she played. So it really is a tough question to answer. But I do think the Margaret Court record shouldn't be mentioned. I do think that's a fake record. And I do think that by focusing on Grand Slams, it has kind of discounted Steffi Graf from the conversation. I think she deserves to be spoken about much more when it comes to the Grand Slams as well, because her career was, I mean, it was arguably like the benchmark for any career in women's tennis. I mean, it's incredible.
Thank you, Saif, for that question. Listeners, if you've got any questions for the mailbag, make sure to get in touch with us on social media or email. We're always happy to read them and debate them, so make sure you get them in. But we're now going to move on to talking about, Chris, the return of the true mixed team event, the Hopman Cup, returning to Nice this summer. We had it's an exhibition event. There are no ranking points. We've had the first 3 pairs announced. The headliner is probably Spain. Carlos Alcaraz and Paula Badosa are going to play. We're going to have Richard Gasquet and Elise Cornet for France, while Switzerland will feature Belinda Bencic and Leandro Riedi. What do you make of this announcement? The players that they've got. Do you think it can be a success? Because the one thing I am worried about is that this is in like late July, and I was looking at the schedule, and there's a lot of events going on at the same time. Events with ranking points. You got Budapest, Palermo, Gstaad, and Bastad all on at the same time. How are they going to draw players to play an exhibition event when ranking points are on is my biggest worry.
I mean, especially the week after Wimbledon. So if these players do play well at Wimbledon and get great results, there's no way that they'll be turning up the next week for the Hopman Cup. So I have to say it's a real scheduling issue. I think it's something, the nature of when it was played previously and in Australia was a very natural warm-up type event, because it meant that you got to play more than one singles guaranteed, because it was a round-robin format, and lots of top players like that, because, you know, you don't necessarily play one match and then suddenly you're playing a Grand Slam. So I don't think the scheduling is particularly good. I do think it's probably one of the worst scheduling of an event possibly ever, because if you want to attract top talent, it's very hard for those players to commit and know that they will be there, because you don't want to put up last minute and be one of those players that does that. And it is quite like an intense week, because you will be playing multiple matches in a day, because of the nature of that tournament. So if you're a mid to lower ranked player, your eyes will be on the ranking points. And if you're a top ranked player, you'll probably hope that you wouldn't want to be there by the time it comes around to the tournament. So I feel for the organisers, it's very hard to schedule a tournament and to get people to play at any time of the year when there are no ranking points on the line. Hence, the United Cup did have ranking points. But I think when it comes down to it, most of these players won't necessarily be there with full certainty.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. But yeah, for me, just reading about it, it feels like a bit of a come down from after Wimbledon. Nice Lawn Tennis Club, it's giving me like Hurlingham Club exhibition type vibes. I can't see the real competition be there. I think it might be a bit more playful, a bit more, as I say, in a true, pure kind of exhibition.
Have some
sense.
rosé. Have some rosé. Watch some tennis.
Yeah, exactly.
And
hey, that can attract a certain crowd, and we'll have to see how it does. I do enjoy that they've brought back the name, the Hopman Cup. I feel like it's been off the tour for too long. But yeah, let's wait and see. Let's see what the other pairs.
Are you sad it's no longer in Australia? That was my question, because obviously that was the nature of it, was that it was there previously because of Harry Hopman, obviously.
No, I think legacies can travel around the world. I think the saddest thing, obviously, about it not being in Australia, as you said, is that timing, that it was at the start. It was nice. It was a nice, easy way into the season, whereas this is like peak middle of the season, and to have, I think, what the tones and the association of the event from the start of the season, now plonking that in the middle of the season, I feel like there's going to need to be some sort of, reset, maybe even some sort of reset there in terms of what this is.
Why can't we just call the United Cup the Hopman Cup and everyone's happy?
I know. That would be the logical thing. But we'll see how it goes. We've got 3 pairs still to wait on, but we do have Indian Wells coming up this week. Starts tomorrow. Draws are out. Qualifying is underway. I think final qualifying rounds are tonight. Might even already be underway. We're going to quickly look at the men and women's draws, and we're going to offer some Grand Slam style predictions for you listeners. Kim has actually also got in touch and told us her expected champions. So we've all had our say. And looking at the men's draw, well, actually, let's first of all look at who's not in the men's draw, because that's been a big lead-up story to the announcement. Both Rafa and Novak Djokovic not there. Rafa not there, still coming back from injury. You suspect he's just kind of getting himself ready for the clay season. The sad thing about that is that, again, another record that maybe we don't talk about enough versus Grand Slams. After 17 years, 10 months, 23 days, he is going to be exiting the top 10. So, yeah, get out the violins. Very, very sad for that.
17 years.
I know, it's a genuinely, that is a mad stat that
given all of the injuries, that's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, exactly. So Rafa's not there, and Novak Djokovic is not there. He is, as we all know, he's not vaccinated. He, he applied, I think, to get into the United States. There was some surprising kind of lobbying going on from, the USTA and the US Open social media account, which sort of took me by surprise, but he wasn't allowed entry. He did do the noble thing this time, though, and dropped out before the draw was made. Chris, what do you make of this? This is not kind of anything new. We've had this happen before, but it's a little bit different this time.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a real shame that once again, we're without Djokovic and Nadal at one of the biggest tournaments. And it's very different reasons. I think with Djokovic, I can understand people's frustrations. I mean, the rules end next month, but at the same time, why should Djokovic be entitled to an exemption for that? So I understand it from both sides, but it does feel like this is a bit of a hangover of COVID rather than something that is very much pertinent to health and safety right now in the US. So I do think I can understand both sides of that. I think this is the perfect opportunity without Nadal, obviously last year's finalist, or Djokovic, the form player of this year, without them in the draw, for one of those players like Taylor Fritz to pick up a title they otherwise might not have gone all the way and won last year. So I think it's a big shame that we're still in this situation, but I do think the positives of that is that maybe we'll see some of the younger generation start to back up wins they've had previously, or finally kind of get a Masters title.
Well, Taylor Fritz is the defending champion, and I would not be surprised if we have another new champion, especially because, Carlos Alcaraz, he is the top seed, but he is coming back from some sort of injury niggle. Stefanos Tsitsipas as well. There's a little bit of an injury cloud over him because he dropped out of his event last week. Can't remember which one it was, but
Acapulco.
Oh no,
Acapulco,
yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Acapulco? Was it Dubai? I forget. Anyway, where do you look at with this draw? Because Daniil Medvedev is the 5th seed. Is he? I mean, to me, and I feel like for every other tennis fan, is he the favourite going into the competition?
I think he probably does have to be. I'm not sure how well he's played there previously. I don't think he's necessarily played his best tennis over in California. I do think there are some other players who it could be interesting to see how they will kind of put it together. And I think it's more of a draw. We're looking at what form are people in. And there's some questions about form when it comes to players like Casper, the number 3 seed. Tsitsipas hasn't really played much since that Australian Open final. He's had some early losses. That loss to Yannick Sinner. And so we've got kind of the question of, can Norrie bring his form through? He's obviously played very well here before. And in this swing, he's had some great results. So I think for me, it's kind of who will take the chance. Is it someone like Hurkacz who's playing really well at the moment? Can he back up that Miami win by picking up an Indian Wells title? Can Sinner push on? So for me, I think it's the question of who's going to take this opportunity, because with the gaping hole of Djokovic not being in there and Nadal, I think it really does offer a chance for someone to prove their worth and win what would be kind of 6 matches in a row to take a title, which is the ultimate kind of preparation for a slam.
And on the women's side, again, before we get into the looking at the draw very, very quickly, news today, the WTA have done a deal with some private equity company called CVC Capital Partners. Now, this is a private equity firm. They basically, from what I understand, they just put loads of money into various different sports. They've worked with Six Nations Rugby and Spain's La Liga. Now, they have given over in some way or another £125 million to the WTA, which sounds great to me. I'm reading this like, this is the void left by cutting ties with China over Peng Shuai. So I'm glad that they've got some sort of money coming in from somewhere. They've obviously gone down the private equity route. However, I am a little bit nervous because I'm looking at Cosmos, for example, coming in and like doing all these things to Davis Cup and then swiftly exiting. So although I'm sort of buoyed by this and excited by this and this sort of massive stable investment, I still think there's a few little kind of tales from the past that need to be, that people should be aware of, so that we don't fall into any kind of pitfalls again, like Cosmos, who came in, did what they want for 2 years and then left.
That is definitely a very real risk. Wouldn't it be easier if Jessica Pegula and her family just put this money up? Oh my God,
what a great shout.
She's going to stick much more to the WTA and be much closer to that than a private equity situation. But again, I do think it's great that there is this funding going into women's tennis. And I mean, they could have obviously invested in men's tennis. They've invested in women's tennis in this instance. And I think it does allow the WTA to have that freedom to avoid China in these situations. And it was a big stance they made there. And I think this is sort of the funding they need to be able to continue have the resolve that they did in what were difficult circumstances. So positive to get some more influx of cash.
And very quickly, looking at the draw, Chris, Iga Swiatek, top seed. Is this like Daniil Medvedev to the men's draw? Is this Iga's to lose, or where are you looking at as your front runners for the Indian Wells on the women's side?
I have to say, I do think that Iga is gonna put in a really good showing here. I think Krejcikova doesn't have a very good draw. She is due to play Sabalenka in the round of 16, I believe. And that match, I mean, there was a bagel in Sabalenka's favour there. And I think potentially the conditions do favour Sabalenka. So Krejcikova in the mix. There's a few other players like Bencic, I think, is in the mix again. She's obviously been playing
Emma
very
Raducanu.
well. I think with Emma Raducanu...
I'm just glad Emma Raducanu's in the draw. She's got Danka Kovinic, who beat her at the Australian Open when we had all those blisters come up on Raducanu's hand. But Kovinic has been in some rank form recently. I think she lost to Heather Watson, had a very good win actually last week against her. So I think Raducanu could get some revenge there.
Yeah, surely, Joel, you'll be watching Sloane Stephens versus Sophia Kenin. I reckon that's
Grand Slam champion versus Grand Slam champion in the first round.
Exactly. And when we get to predictions, I think you might be very shocked, but maybe slightly shocked, but I think not necessarily surprised, I'd say, when it comes to where I've got Sloane going in this draw.
I mean, we are already running on overtime, so let's get to some predictions. I want you to just go through your quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, and champion.
Firstly, I'd like to say, just before I go, that we did get some intel from Kim that she is going Medvedev and Swiatek, just to caveat
Straight
whatever we're about to say for the winners there. I see an Alcaraz-Hurkacz match for the men. I see Diminar, Rune, an all-Russian affair in Medvedev, Kachanov. I think Norrie's going to have a great tournament. I think Dimitrov might spring an upset or two. Mm-hmm. And then into the semis, I've gone for Hurkacz and Rune, Medvedev and Norrie. And then I've gone for a Rune-Norrie final. And with a Rune win, I am what you might think is slightly biased by the fact
and I
that
do.
Yes, but I just think his game is so good, and I don't think he'll be cramping on court. I think he's just going to get it done.
Okay.
Back-to-back Masters titles, Joel.
I have gone similarities, but also differences. I've got Alcaraz, Hurkacz, Fritz, Sinner, Medvedev, Rude.
No.
I think I'm already slightly regretting that, I think, with Rude. Norrie, Tsitsipas in that bottom quarter. Hurkacz, Sinner, semi-final. And Medvedev, Norrie. I've got a Hurkacz, Medvedev final with Medvedev winning.
We're not too far off there.
I think it's going to be Medvedev. Yeah.
The only thing I'd say that I'd like to draw attention to is that I do have Tsitsipas going out to Messi Cressy, earlier on. So I'll have to stop doing that in case he ever listens to the podcast.
I still can't really believe you've got Medvedev Norrie semi-final and Norrie winning that. Like, what?
I also can't believe that, but I think I was doing it and thought that I don't think that Rune would beat Medvedev, so I think I swapped it. But you know what, Norrie, I've been impressed by him this season, winning ugly.
Okay, what have you got now on the women's side?
I've gone for a very tough clash between Swiatek and Garcia. I've got Stevens taking out Rybakina, and she's going to face Azarenka in that quarterfinal. I've got Sakari Ostapenko. I've got a rematch again of Bencic Sabalenka, and I've got a Swiatek Stevens semi-final. And an Ostapenko-Sabalenka semi-final. So I've really gone for my favourites there with a Swiatek-Sabalenka final with Iga taking the title once more.
I mean, that is pure fantasy land in my book. I've got Swiatek Garcia, Azarenka, Rybakina, Pliskova, Pegula, Bencic, Krejcikova. My semis are Swiatek, Rybakina, Pegula, Krejcikova. And then I've got a Rybakina, Krejcikova final. That would be a fantastic final, I think. And then I've got Rybakina as my ladies Indian Wells singles champion. So
is she fit, Joel? That's the big question. That's very brave.
Is she not fit? Oh, I didn't even... Oh, God, I didn't...
She actually withdrew from the last match she was due to play, so... It never happens.
Don't tell me that
it's
now.
Fine. It's fine.
Don't tell me that now, right?
We'll put these up on our socials and you can tell us.
What a downer to end on. But come on, Rybakina. I believe in you. But yeah, we're going to be watching Indian Wells as it unfolds. And obviously we're going to be keeping you, all of our listeners, up to date. So I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action from the ATP and WTA tours. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Tennis Weekly Pod. You can email the show at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com or check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back next Monday at Tennis Weekly HQ for another episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. So I hope you can join us for that. And hopefully Kim will be back from Parma as well. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.